Interesting. Alright, so we're back. I'm going to get some streaming done. I've got a comment on the chat that I'm going to respond to real quick because I happen to have a crash report. Or is this a crash report or a bug report? It's a crash report. We'll take a quick look at this gym because it might be something I can help you with. So I'm looking at the code that's not indented correctly. And I mean, this might be just a problem with the 4coder logic on indents. Yeah. So 4coder isn't gonna really like the idea of the sort of brace literals that Pear uses a lot in his C code, where you put like the name of the struct and then brace, then the member, like the fields that you're giving values to, you in order, and then the brace. It looks like that's what you're using here. It doesn't like that because inside of parenthesized groups, it tends to line everything up with the parenthesis kind of aggressively, or like other weird stuff like this. So yeah, it's not really gonna do a good job of indenting that. Now my guess would be that that's not the reason that it crashed. It looks like it crashed as you were typing, and you were probably typing a comma based on the picture you sent me. And that makes me think that it's a bug I fixed recently which is actually one of the bugs we are putting a regression test in right now, which is that it had a bug for a while, 4coder did, when there's an array that stores all the tokens. And when it goes from 4096 to 4097 tokens, like the capacity and the size are equal, and so like the iteration, or I got that back wrong, it's off by one. If it goes from 4095 to 4096, then at that moment the size and capacity become equal. And so as it's going to render, it like iterates one past the end, and then we'll hit a guard page that I've put there to catch this kind of bug, since I do it all the time. So yeah, that's probably what your crash is, and I think the crash is fixed. The indent is probably not fixed. But yeah, it looks like this is probably from that piece of code that I found crashing, just based on all the stuff you sent me. So what that basically means is the next build I send out will have that fixed, but not the indent stuff, which is more to do with 4coder's indent being highly specialized to my particular C++ style. The most you could probably do is turn off virtual whitespace and then adjust accordingly the text indenter, since that is in the custom code right now. Or, like just whenever Pear does those literals, you just do the extra work of pulling them out, I guess, maybe? I don't know. I wonder if that's sometimes impossible, if it's like in a macro or something. It could start to cause pretty large divergence from his code if you always had to pull those out into variables on the stack instead of just literals. Anyway, let's yeah. So you probably just want to like go in there and maybe write your own indenter, but if you don't want to do that, you could even just, I don't know, turn it off. Whenever you get the thing where you're trying to insert a token and it crashes, the best way to get past that, like obviously it crashes and you lose a couple of, like a minute or so of what you were typing, and that sucks. But then what I always do is I then go and grab a big chunk of code and paste it, because if it crosses that 4096 without actually stopping at 4096, then it doesn't hit the crash. So you just need to always push it past that boundary manually, which is super stupid, obviously, but that's what you do. That's what I do to get it to stop crashing. And when I'm trying to type something like that in, and then and that'll be fixed in the next build. Alright, and with that, let us start writing some code. So, things that I want to look at doing. Right now, I want to start with this. We're generating just one test right now, and the way this test is supposed to work is that I tell it to go all the way to like 1,000, so that it definitely crosses over, because the idea was how many tokens are there here? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 on each line. So if I do 1,000 iterations of this, I definitely cross that 4096 barrier. But the problem with that is it just takes a long time. So what we really want to do is we want to say, let's generate several tests, and for each test we want to generate, let's generate a file that's near the border, and then just have the test do like 10 insertions to go 5 before and 5 after that border and cross it. And then we'll say generate this test for all these, like generate one for 512, maybe we'll go back to like do 256, 512, 1024, 2048, 4096, and then we'll be convinced that maybe we don't want to start so far back, because maybe we want to do more like 1024, 2048, 4096, 8100, and whatever, and so on. So we do a couple of those boundaries probably. So I have a question that asks, is there any way to get old 4coder builds? There used to be on the Patreon. I don't know on itch.io if there's a way to ask for old builds, but the oldest builds available only go back to like 4023. You could just email me, and I'll give you any old build that you want that matches the one you have for 4025, right? Like, so if you've purchased 4025 on itch.io, then I'll give you the super version of any of the previous builds on my email. And if you just want the free ones, I'll give you those too. Anyway, yeah, just email me and we'll work something out. So what I want to do is capacity stressor 1. Yeah, well, instead of just making this one here, we're going to call this generate capacity stressors. And we're going to say so this is going to become like a loop. Let's do it like this. So yeah, let's start with 1024 and let's see, 2, 4, 8, 16. We'll do 5 of these. So I equals 0. I is less than 5. We're going to do size shift over by 1. I plus equals 1, right? Or I guess in C style we can do plus plus I. All right. In C/C++ land, I've been writing more and more code where I don't use the plus plus thing ever, and so I'm like slowly phasing that out. So I don't know, but this code uses it a lot, and that's the kind of place. This is like the one place where I'd be okay with using it all the time. But well, that's not true. I guess the difference is whether or not I'm writing code that I am thinking of as, well, never mind. And then in there, we're going to do the test. And so, yeah, what this is going to look like is at each step, I need to get a few names figured out. So there'll be the test name space. Grab that. Do I have strings here? Yeah, I do. Great. Test name equals make fixed with string test name space, and then we can append onto the test name gen test cap stress. We'll append into string. We'll put the index on there like this. And then maybe I'll do that plus 1. And then we'll append the rest of the file name for is, and then we'll terminate it with null. And we're going to take that and assert that it was successful. and then we're going to take test name.stir to open our file. Alright, so now we are getting our file names and generating multiple files. So the next thing is these file names here. We kind of want to auto-generate multiple sample files that will be used. And this is where things start getting wacky. If I'm auto-generating the starting files, do I really want those in samples the way it is? Let's think about this. So, sample files right now is just a bunch of nonsense that I use for manually testing for a while. I think what we're going to do is we're going to introduce non-source test data sample files. We're going to make their generated. This changes everything. Alright, now what we'll do is we'll just make a .git ignore, and the git ignore on this folder is going to say ignore anything that says generated, or gen at the beginning. If it says gen, then that's a file that we generated and we don't want to sync those. And then we'll have a little thing that's like I don't know, generate capacity stressor sample file, and that will just take a index and a size, I guess, and it will return to us sample namespace 512 make fixed with string. Let's do it this way. Now here's a question: why don't I already have an arena set up for this shit? That's the real question. That's the real mystery. I guess they're all called partitions in this fucking code base because I didn't know what I was doing. 4coder lib 4coder mem .h. Whoops. Should probably go blow my nose. Might do that in a second. So let's see. Can I do this? Yeah, so we need generate capacity stressor sample file partition index. We'll call this like the token target, right? And then what we're gonna do is we're gonna say, alright, we need to do like 10 before and 10 after, because there's a couple extra tokens for whatever we do like to set this up. So we're gonna do this. First we're gonna get the sample name. That's what we'll return out the other end. And so there we get our name. How you feeling about that? Partition. Alright, don't worry about that. We will get to it. So, Um, um, sample name, and then we're going to push on there the following things. We're going to call this gen, so that it gets picked up by the getIgnore, cap stress, and then we're going to put that. We're going to finish it off with a .txt, and in the middle there, not push array, this should be append, and this is append int. This is going to take the index plus 1. So we're making a series of these files, and then what we're going to do is, gen cap stress. I'm actually going to rename these to token cap. I'm just going to call it tokens, or token test. I'm trying to keep the names short so that they get typed quickly, because each one is like an extra frame of typing, which is kind of a weird generate capacity stress. We're going to call this generate token test. There we go. We're going to have to pass our partition in here before we're done, so I'll just preemptively do that. Alright, so this is good. Terminate with null, the sample name, get the success, assert success. That's kind of how I want this to read, actually. In fact, whoops, what was that? Get rid of this. I'm thinking more like string build success. Yes. There we go. So then token test sample file. So that gives me the file name, and we're going to open it. Sample name stir right binary if out does not equal 0. Else what we'll do is we will set the sample name string back to 0 and size back to 0 and memory size back to 0. And then down here, it is if we actually get one, then we'll do that. Otherwise, we might want like a global error. How did I do this? Meta 4coder file. Do I have like an error thing? I guess I just print it out myself. Okay. Alright, so that would be sample name.stir. Alright. Don't do that. Fucking suck. 4coder's the worst. Alright. So, let's do this. I'm going to take a quick break to go blow my nose, because I didn't bring tissues in here this morning. I'll answer your question when I get back, Jim. Alright, sorry about that. So Jim's asking, is there any special reason why I'm getting away from using the incrementer, the plus plus, and doing this instead? There's a couple reasons. I mean, it's a little hard to articulate because it starts from a position of just what feels like what feels like it fits in with the way I do other things. Like, I don't know, a lot of these things sort of flow from a position that's more intuitive than precise, but it kind of has something to do with the fact that this is it acts as well, what it really comes down to is that I'm getting kind of more and more convinced that I wish that expressions couldn't have side effects, and that, like, so if I were making a language, first of all, obviously, like, this would be a side effect, but it wouldn't be an expression, which is kind of, you know, a common thing to try out. Like, I think JI and Bitwise are both doing this, where you can't use equals in the expression context. It's only a statement level thing. And this is, to me, a similar situation where it has a side effect and it is an expression, and I don't really like that. Now, the only reason that that's not a fully good, like, point is that, like, this is not necessarily, you know, that's not necessarily without side effects. And a part of me thinks that yeah, it's hard to say, but a part of me thinks that I'd like to go so far as to say that a language should only allow this one exception to that, maybe? I don't know. I can't really explain why I feel this way these days, but, like, I also have noticed that when I'm using the plus plus, where I can put it before or after, it's just one more step of thinking about things, so I often will end up doing, unlike most C programmers who would do this kind of thing, right? I often end up going like, no, don't do that, because I'm just going to get confused about what these things mean, so I end up writing it this way anyway. And then, I don't know, it just over time starts to feel like that's a weird thing to read, like plus plus A. It just feels weird to read. It doesn't speak to me the same way this does, I guess. Like, I can see the one, I can think about the idea that it's one thing. And the thing is, I do use it still. Like, I know how it works, and sometimes it comes out by habit, but it's more that I tend to find when I'm going back and reading code where I've heavily used that, in cases like this one, I kind of read it and just go like, I wish I had used something that wrote the number 1 everywhere, because um, I just wish I did. I can't exactly explain it better than that. It's not really like, I don't have an argument for it, a precise good reason. It's just sort of a feels thing. And I try to avoid doing those things where I'm pre-incrementing something as an expression that I then store. I still do it once in a while, just like I said, because it's a habit, but it's more about, I know the fact that when I go back to reread it later, my brain just wishes it was spelled out more. Another part of why I don't like it is when you go back to read the code and you want to really see how much work is this code doing, writing shit like this, you're basically just lying to yourself about how much work this code is doing, because what's really happening here, if you were to see it all done out in registers, is like, if we imagine A and B are both in registers, well, what's really happening is, you know, like this. So there's 2 instructions that have to occur, but this isn't even really an instruction, I don't think. I'm pretty sure you can't do this as 1 instruction in most cases. I'd actually have to build it and find out. But it seems to me like what would actually happen here is you end up in a situation where what's really happening is, like, this is happening, like, this is the real honest version of that code that kind of more correctly reports how complicated this task is. Now, I'm not sure about that last one. Maybe there's an instruction that moves from memory to memory, but I feel like that would probably come into a register and then go back out. And yeah, I'm feeling these days like I like the code to be a little bit more like closer to assembly, like an abstracted assembly, and not not compressing itself like in that particular way. And I don't know, it sounds a bit odd to say, because there's also, like, on the flip side of this, now I'm writing all these variables twice, so there's more failure points. Like, these need to always be synced and these need to always be synced, whereas in the one-liner you don't have that problem. Yeah, it might be something I'm wrong about, but it's like, it's the experiment that I'm doing most recently. And some of these experiments I end up going back on. Like, for a while I did all of my declarations at the top of a scope, and now I've got rid of that. Alright, looks like I might have been wrong. Let's take a look at this link here. Yeah, so maybe that is 1 instruction. I guess I don't see code do that very often. But yeah, that's good to know. So let me adjust here a little bit. Let's get this thing written. So our goal here is to make a test file, and it doesn't have to be particularly interesting. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Six. So we start off with 6 tokens. Yeah, the reason I wouldn't have imagined you could do a move from memory to memory and never visit registers is because, or the reason I would imagine that you would avoid that sort of thing is that that's kind of like a lot of work to try to fit into 1 instruction, and it seems like, you know, with all the things that have to happen in terms of fetching in the cache and whatever, you're now like running the memory, the addresser, like memory addressing system twice in 1 instruction, and it feels like that ends up being a bottleneck that makes it not that much different, except that maybe you get to save the register, which is actually kind of important sometimes. You don't have to dump the contents of register on the way. I don't know. All I know is that I don't think I've seen it generated in any of the code I've stepped through in disassembly before, so that's why I didn't think it was there. So here's the situation. We're generating 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 tokens by default. So we're going to keep a token count here. It's like, alright, we got 6 tokens. Now we want to get within a situation where the number of tokens that we're shooting for is less than or equal to, or the number of tokens we have currently plus 10 is greater than or equal to the token target. That's what we're looking for. And we kind of also want to say, like, initially let's assert that the token count is less than the token target, so that we're not trying to make a really weird test with this someday or something. Alright. Now the only other thing we got to think about here is yeah, this can't go here. This has to go at the other end. So that's how we'll end the file. And so we have 6 tokens, although only 5 of them are printed. The 6th one is going to be right here no matter what. And then we're basically just saying while the token count plus 10 is less than the token target, so for example, going back to that plus plus thing for one more second, this for loop thing that I do now where I never use while, I always just use for, this is another one of those things that was like a weird experiment where when I first started it I didn't have a very good reason for it, and I just over time decided to give this thing a try, and there's been no regret on that one. Yeah. So yeah, these are just little experiments that I try and see if I like the change or not, you know. Looking for better ways to do things. Yeah, so here what we're going to do is we're just going to be really brief about it because we don't care that it's actually correct code. And I'm going to stop, you know, being too silly about this. So we'll do keyword x equals 0 semicolon. So we get a nice mixture of, you know, two sort of well, this isn't really an operator, but the semicolon is punctuation style thing, and the equals is punctuation style thing. A number, a keyword, and an identifier. So we get a nice mix of types of keywords there, and that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 new keywords, so there we go. And that means since we're incrementing by 5 at a time, we're trying to get within 10, we should be able to land within it. So tbod ask, is that actually reindenting the entire file on every key press? How big does the file have to get before that becomes slow? It's not actually reindenting every time. You're right that that's what it looks like it's doing, right? But that is one of the magic tricks of 4coder. It does get slow with big files, and there's a new engine coming out to fix that, but it doesn't get slow until you're talking about like just ridiculously huge files. Like you'd have to get into like the maybe like a quarter or half of a megabyte range, right? And for an idea of how big that is, that's like since it's 256K, it's probably a 15,000 to 20,000 line code file where that becomes a little bit noticeable of a problem. The reason it's not that, like, the reason it scales as well as it does, even though that's not as good as I want it to be, but the reason it scales as well as it doesn't actually indent the text. It's just using virtual whitespace, which means it ignores the whitespace in the file and renders it however it wants. So it's actually just in the sort of layout and rendering pass that it's doing those decisions. It's not like updating the spaces until I save the file. I can't read this name because of the background color on the Twitch is all messed up. Enzin asks, I'm a little confused about where to get the customization layer for 4coder. The Patreon is down. Yeah, the Patreon is down. If you found a link to my Patreon somewhere, let me know, because I tried to get rid of all of those links, but I might have left one somewhere. You can get the new 4coder builds on the 4coder itch.io page now. Enzin. Uh-oh, I'm not logged in. What do you mean I'm not logged in? Apparently I'm not logged into the chat. One second. I'm gonna lose the chat for a second here. Typing in a password. Alright. Okay, and now I have the chat back, and here is the itch.io link. Hmm. 4coder.com still links to Patreon. Whoops, I'll have to fix that. Let's fix that in the site code real quick. So site, source material, home. Yeah, that still goes to there, doesn't it? Let's fix that real quick. So it is http://4coder itch.io 4coder. Okay. It's not really support development either. It's more like get builds. I'll call it get builds and support development. How do one spell development? Alright, I got it right. Twitch blog link, huh? Let me take a look at that real quick. You're talking about on my Twitch page? Thought I had all these Twitch ones working. Where is this link? Uh-oh, that is broken. Where is that linking? That is correct, actually. Oh, I guess I need to add that. Alright. Boom. Boom. Okay. Yep, got it. Okay. So now let's get back to work. Generating these things, and they come out. We get within 10 tokens of where we need to be, and then we're done. So that's good. And then let's see, we're going to jump to where we need to go. Instead of all this, now all we have to do is press the down key. We'll keep that, yeah, we'll keep that. Key down, so now it'll start at the top of the file and hit control down, which should take it down one file. Let me just test. if I'm right here and I have like this, like that, and I go down, yep, that works. Okay. That's what it's supposed to do, but I just wanted to be sure. If not, I would have had to fix it anyway, I guess, so. So we, might actually set the base weight there just to save those extra frames. Okay. Now we load the sample name here, and we're going to drop it over there. Then we only need to do 20 iterations here, and we're just going to simplify this shit in the interest of making things as fast as they can be. So it'll go down, and then it will fill 20 lines, thereby going definitely into and past the required target. Now, what I actually want to do is I want to make sure that it can't possibly end where token count. So suppose token count that we're looking for, or the token target we're looking for, is 16, and we started with 6, and it'll stop right away, which is fine. And it would. What if it was just 7? It would still stop right away. So the only way this could ever fail is if this was at 6. Then we would stop right away and already be there. But I just want to make sure, yeah, so the token count, the final token count will always be less than token target. There's no question. Alright. Let's just be absolutely sure by saying right here that we again assert that at no point along the way does token count actually become equal to or greater than token target. So then we generate the file, we generate the test script. And then finally down here, we're just going to need to do make part equals part. Whoops. I must be sending that straight to standard out accidentally. Yeah. Why does it keep saying that? There we go. Do I curse more on stream now? I might do. Yeah, I don't curse more in person. Although, yeah, I mean, I think last year I was streaming from an office where, like, the people next door would have been just like other people who, I don't know. I didn't have quite as much privacy from my last streaming locations. Like, I was always either in an apartment building where I was set up pretty close to other people, or in an office building where I was set up pretty close to other people. So I think I swore less in those situations because of that. I mean, I had a roommate last year, which I don't have now, and he and I would have sworn. I was swearing more then just because I was. I mean, yeah. I think you're right, though. I think I probably swore less on stream in the past. But I think that it's not a huge influence. I don't think it's a huge influence from the new job or from the place. I think is more like the other way, that I was used to be influenced to not swear on stream for random reasons that are no longer applicable. Maybe, I don't know. Yeah, that's not really true. There's definitely times that I swore here and there on the old streams. It might have, I think it might have increased recently, though. I'm not sure. Okay, so that wasn't right. That was all wrong. Let's take a look at what's happening here. So I run the test generator, and we get test data, sample files. Where are my gen tests? I'm not seeing my gen tests here. Are these being dumped in the wrong place? Like here, for instance? Yeah. No. So here are my gen test cap stress stuff. Why am I not getting... Alright. Definitely closing the file. It shouldn't be in the right folder because I'm not doing anything to make that happen. This stuff is nasty. I hate having to do this. Alright, so first things first, why are we not getting files? Second thing, how do we want to direct which folder a file goes to when I create it? If I do it by just putting the full fucking path, there I did it again, on the name, then that makes the code much more complicated because we end up having to pass these paths through everything or make them global, and then we have to also like do this whole thing twice because I do it once to get the name that I return. I would do it again to get the name I use for opening the file. An alternative would be that I make this a separate program. And the reason I'm suggesting doing that is, one, I could run it in a different directory, and two, since I'm trying to make these things fast anyway, maybe I want the thing that generates test files that could be very large test files to be on a different path that I run less frequently. But that's yet another set of scripts and main and build like buttons to hit, and this is already getting a little out of hand. Like, I have 3 stages to this thing now with the generate, build, and run. And that's going to end up with another stage too. It's the post check. So then we're talking about, what, 5 full stages if I split this out. So it's like generate samples, generate tests, build tests, run tests, post-check the test results. That's a lot of different stages, and making them all optional doesn't do anything except all that does is make them faster, but also more complicated to keep everything straight. What I was hoping to do is to put this all in one program, but then if I put it all in one program, what do? Do I have one section where I do all my sample generation and then one section where I do all my test generation? Then things that are shared between them, like file names, have to be computed twice. If, on the other hand, I don't do that, how do I change my current directory? I can't do that in a platform-independent way unless I make a wrapper around fopen. That's what I'll do. Alright, so what we're going to have is we're going to just go ahead and say something like fopen hot directory, and I pass in a file name and like whatever the flags or whatever, and we're going to pass in the flags, but then we're going to pass in an arena, a partition, temp, begin temp memory on that. There we go. And so what is this doing? By the way, why did it pick up the word temporary just now? I guess I already had temp and then I hit that. Okay, anyway. So now what we want is, I have to be able to say something like, full name equals push an array onto the scratch of chars, and that will be the hot directory dot size, and then I will hot directory dot size full name. Then I'm going to mem copy into the full name from the hot directory string hot directory size, and then I'm going to push an array on there again. That's the thing. What do I call this? Not sure. But it's going to be like, here's the scratch again, char, and that's the file name length. That we can get by going file name length equals string length, string size, file name. And then what we need to know is, like, what is the full name file part. And then we're going to mem copy into there, from there, the file name length. And then we're going to put a terminator right there. And now we can take the full name right here, result, and return that. Now all we need is right here, a hot directory, like that. And so then what we just have to do is set the hot directory before calling this guy. Set hot directory, string, hot directory equals string, something like this. Now maybe I'm going to actually want this though. And the reason I'm going to want that is so then I end up doing this, so that I can do things like pushing and popping directories off of it as well. Yes, because then when I start in the input data folder, I will I don't get why there's not a gen token test there. So, we got these. I don't know why I didn't get the 5 other ones. I want to take a look-see-loo at that before I go ahead and put this into use. Let me make sure that that builds. Alright, where... Make string slowly. Stir size. Why did I do that? I gotta write a new string library. 4coder is based on like the first generation string library, and I've made like partial ones that do some of the stuff that the 4coder one does, and I can get it so much better now, like cleaning up all the naming and shit. But I want to get the UTF-8 and UTF-16, UTF-32 ASCII stuff rolled in there. I gotta take that on as a project sometime soon. Getting sick of it. Anyway, so yeah, let's take a quick look-see-loo now at why it is that I'm not getting this. Because they should really be showing up right there. We're going to want to look at broop, zoop, doop, doop. There we go. Let's see. Generate token test sample name, blah 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 blah. So we successfully built the name. It says gen token test 1.txt. Yeah, these are the tests, the 4ID tests. Whoop, whoop, whoop. So now we try to open that, and we got it. We write the stuff out. And then ultimately, we write that out. And we close it. I don't see it. Okay, well this is different because it's probably running from here. Yeah, so that actually did get created. Whoops, you go away. Let's fix that. So this needs to run from fored. Will you just give me the browser? Non-source test data, input data. Alright. So that's where you're supposed to run. Run through 4coder non-source test data, input data. Okay, so that is interesting. That's very interesting. We're getting all of these things. Oh, you know what? None of that's correct. I know what's happening here. I know what's happening here. These are all getting generated. Yeah, the input data is all okay. Alright, I know what's happening here. So, this is the wrong path, first of all. These are not going here. These are going to This browser sucks. Why is he giving me the sucky suck? This is lame. Test input scripts. Okay. Actually, I think it's under /generated. So, now I can go find those to confirm my theory. Yeah, so that's where these are dropping. These are dropping right there. So, now we know what's happening is these are actually output right here. The 4 IDs are coming from the build, not from the generate, which means that we definitely need to be able to change what folder we're in, because we're going to end up going get the current directory at the beginning, and then pop, push, push to get this one set up, and then we'll have to have those. Alright, Jim, I'm not entirely sure. I won't read what he says because it's not exactly a question, but I just want to say I'm not entirely sure I know what you're saying. Could you, I know you're talking about rope data structures, I know what you mean, but when you say, I'm assuming the changes you talked about are around there, what do you mean the changes I talked about? What changes? I'm not entirely sure to what you are referring when you say that. I might stream making changes to buffer stuff someday, I'm not sure. I did that a while back. I don't know if you ever saw my, did you ever see my Git repository with all my buffer experiments? I have some other experimental streams I'd like to do, like, oh, I was talking about my string library. So right now, UTF-8, UTF-16 stuff is just a separate library that actually ships with the 4coder like stuff when you get the API. Yeah. But I want to roll that into a string library because sometimes you want to do things like get the length of a UTF-16 string, and sometimes you want to be able to do stuff like that, and it just becomes this horrible thing about like you're writing the loop manually that you already have for the 1 byte case, but you now need to do it on the 2 byte width and stuff. So that's like I have an open source like public domain style string library right here, and I'm just talking about upgrading that to like a new version that is has the UTF-8 stuff rolled in. Although I am thinking about doing a buffer stream someday. I want to do some experiments on like gigabyte size, like out of core style editing for gigantic logs and text files like that. And I want to do some experiments where I start from scratch and do some things to figure out what works in that range. So that sort of thing will happen. But point is, for now, I'm going to do this. How am I going to get my current directory? This is one of those things where the standard library doesn't give you anything useful to help you out here. Alright, so you can find this is the last thing I'll do off topic for a minute here. GitHub, fourth dimension, buffer tests. Here it is. So in here I implemented a very lame rope. I also did a gap buffer, a multi-gap buffer, and the standard like ungapped array implementation. I did some testing on them to compare their speeds and stuff like that, and an abstraction layer that lets you call them all from like that makes them all have the same outward API. And there's actually streams of me setting some of that up from many years ago. It was like 2015, I think. Maybe 2016. Alright, so generate token, test sample files. Yeah. The problem I'm thinking about right now is how do I want to get the paths? Because when we run this thing, we'll be sitting in this directory. And I don't want to hard code that because not every folder, like the thing that everyone will share is code and non-source will both be at the same level next to each other, but everything else could be different. Right? They could be deeper in, they could be at W without the forward folder containing them, right? All kinds of, anything else could change. The only thing I can count on is that these two guys are at the same level and have the same contents. And so I either have to get the current directory. Maybe I could pass the current directory in as a parameter. That doesn't sound too bad. If I pass the current directory in as a parameter, then I would get here that, and I could do pop, 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 push, push, push to get the other one. Yeah. Let's do that. Alright, so when I call this guy, test generator, alright, so we got to change the print usage. It just became more interesting. Usage name, current, let's call this like the code directory is where I'll start actually. Code root directory. And that's if argc does not exactly equal 2. And then what we'll do is we'll say, okay, set hot directory argv1. And then append onto hot directory the string followed by a slash. Pop folder hot directory, remove last folder, remove last folder from the hot directory. You okay with all that? Alright. You're not okay with the way I'm calling you, which makes sense. Generate tests. So it doesn't matter what we set the current directory to anymore. What we're going to do is we're just going to say pass code as the parameter. So there we go. And then I want to make one more thing, which is directory temp. It's going to look like this. Directory space 4096, one full page, and directory. And then the way this will work is we'll go internal void, or internal directory temp, begin temp directory, or hot begin temp, maybe. and that'll just go like this. We'll take directory temp dot directory. I'm not actually sure how I want that to work. Directory temp. I guess it would have to be more like this. Partition, and then we push an array onto the partition for the hot directory size. We call that the directory space, and then the directory is just the string that you get when you take this with this and you return that temp there. And then we may also want to throw in a temp memory like this, so that we actually are going temp equals, see, that's so nasty though. No, I'm gonna just let that be controlled externally. Hot end temp, we take a directory temp, and we just say set hot directory back to the temp directory that was there. Alright, so that lets us wrap a thing in a single, like, hey, we're going to restore to this later. Then we can make some changes, and actually I'm going to change this. This is like directory, and this is going to be directory restore point, or get hot directory, restore hot directory maybe. Of course that raises the question, why don't I do it this way? Where I just go hot dot stir hot dot size hot dot memory size, and then I can restore it by just setting later the hot directory. And then the only trick is we have to make sure that those are, yeah, okay. So what we're going to do then is we immediately set it from argv1. We're going to first push folder onto the hot directory, let's see, test input scripts. And then we're going to push a folder onto the hot directory. And by the way, we're going to code root equals get hot directory. We'll have to do this underneath the partition. So we set the hot directory to begin with, and then we go, okay, get the code root, test input scripts generated, and then we're going to call this the script root equals get that hot directory, and then we're going to set the hot directory back to the code root. Then we're going to pop a folder off of the hot directory, and we're going to push 4coder non-source. Then we're going to push, what else? 4coder non-source, test data, and then we're going to push sample files. And now, this raises the question, why don't I do it like this? Pop one directory off, push those on, start from there, push those on, do, and we can get that hot directory by going the script root, and that's going to be a global actually. All of these will be global. So code root, get the script root, get the sample root, and then we're going to set the hot directory, generate token, test, yep, good. We're going to come up here and we're going to say, okay, so this code here is a thing. Oops, that thing is with that thing. Hot directory is that guy there. Okay. Then we're going to have right here, by the way, hot directory, you guys need to be globals. And then we're going to have code root, script root, and sample root, like so. And then when we go to do this, we're going to fopen the hot directory, and we're going to set the hot directory to the sample root so that we know we're creating a test sample. And so we set that there. It does the file directory crap that we need it to do, and returns to us the easy portion of the name. Alright, this is probably the nicest way to manage all this directory fuckery that I've ever come up with. Generate the token tests, token test sample file, yeah, that gets us the sample file, and then try open output. Ah, interesting. So we actually want to go down to could not open output file. That is wrong. What we actually want to do is generate token test sample. You call fopen hot directory. Yeah, so what we actually want is we want you to call try open output and you to open fopen hot directory. So try open output. So yeah, you try to open output. That will use the hot directory to append to the file name, and then we grab the file if we can. Otherwise, we return an empty thing, an empty name, and we come through here and fill it. Okay. How are you feeling? Return temp, return hot. fopen hot directory function does not take 2 arguments. Ah, you're right. I have to pass the partition through this now. But that's using it as a scratch, right? So this is actually scratch. And then we just have to pass the partition in here, and we don't have to worry about the allocation there, since that's just being used as scratch. It will get cleared. Alright, now I can't open any of those files, and that's probably because the directory is messed up somehow. So we will take a look-see-loo at it in just a second. But yeah, that's starting to look pretty good. Generate token tests, generate test sample. So this still needs to set the hot directory to the script root before we open that. So that probably just dumped a bunch of that in here, I would imagine. Maybe not. Did it dump it all in here? Yeah, it did. Alright, you guys are gone. And let's try and step through this thing and see what happens. So, when we generate the first test, what happens? What? What was that? Alright, hold on. First things first, you're supposed to run from here now. But what was that? Oh, you need the... Yeah, okay. Actually, it doesn't matter where you run from, you just need that as a parameter. So you can just run from there, I guess, just to be doubly sure that we're matching the way it runs on the script. And there we go. So we've set the hot directory to that. Do you see that? Why is... Oh, that's argv0. argv1 looks different. argv1 looks like this. Yeah. Okay. So then we're going to get the code root. Uh-oh. That ain't right. Alright, let's take a look-see-loo at that. What happened here? What? No. I said here. Okay, something's messed up. Let me build this thing again. Yeah, it's still dumping this crap out here. Gotta be careful, it's like spamming things all over the place right now. We'll have to go back and make sure we've deleted everything. But yeah, I want to see what happens right here. There we go. So, directory size 11. No mem copy, that's the problem. Alright, we want to go to get hot directory. We're mem copy into the hot string from the hot directory string at the size of hot directory size. Boom. Could not open that file for output. Alright, so we want to take a look again. Did we drop any shit in here? It actually looks clean. Input scripts generated. Alright, these guys are good. Not sure why it says we couldn't open gen test cap stress 1. This will be interesting. Let's come over here and see if it generated the sample files. Gen token test 1.txt was the only one it got. Didn't give me the rest. Interesting. Okay. Alright, let's walk through this guy and see what he's doing. Code root, w4ed code. Script root. Yeah, so the first problem is that we're getting that thing and we're not getting any good slashes on that. So what we want to do is just we're going to append onto hot directory right at the beginning. Yeah, we'll set up the hot directory not using the hot directory API. So we're going to copy into the hot directory that thing. We're going to append a slash at the end, and we're going to say replace char. I believe that I can do this. Of course, I should check the API docs real quick to make sure I'm doing that right. Replace char. Yep, that looks good. So, how do you look? Okay. So there's our gen tokens samples. And then we can come over here, make sure there's none sitting down here. That looks clean. And then Input scripts generated. There we go. Alright. Alright. So there we go. That's generating the first test. And let's see. I want to comment this stuff up. Init the hot directory. Init the partition. Get various root paths. Generate tests. There we go. Just give me a little guidance so I can bring my eye quickly down here. So I'm going to start wanting to comment these guys out. I'm going to actually make these like this. Burp, burp, burp. Okay. So there we go. That generates a test. That builds it. And that was running it. Now, I want to take a look at run regression tests. Right now it looks like, yeah, we're just running gen test cap stress 1.4id. And this is where we start running into trouble, because what I want to do is I want to generate a list of the cap stress tests and run all of them, and then just generate this run script that way, which is something that I guess that the gen test will do, which is why I'm taking the code route. But that's pretty good. I'm going to wrap up this stream. I'm going to take a little break from chatting too much and programming all the time. It won't be very long, 5, 10, 15 minutes. Might even stay on stream and play some Go just to pass the time. But I want to take a short break to let my brain cool down before I consider my next step. So let me shut this stream down, and I will be back with more coding in just a little bit.